Hello, thank you for joining us today with Innivee Strategies Lead Different. Thank you for your time, knowledge, experience, and expertise in providing this support for our deaf community, deaf-blind, hard of hearing communities, and supporting with their leadership. This talk is about deaf in AI. It's a very hot topic right now about AI and how it influences our community and the fast pace of involvement that's happening and the new landscape that's coming with AI. So before we begin, I want to thank our sponsors for this, Interpreter Now, for providing access for our community, the interpreters who are voicing, as well as captioning support. This would not be made possible without them, so thank you so much for this. I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, my name is Star Grieser, and I work with Innivee Strategies as an advisor. So now I'd like to introduce the three of you. We have Dr. Abraham Glasser, Dr. Raja Kushalnagar, Raja, and then Dr. Opeoluwa Sotonwa, or Dr. Opie. So I'll go ahead and open this up. If you do not mind introducing yourselves, who you are, and your role as a leader within your organization or institution. So let's start with Abraham first.
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Abraham Glasser, and I'm currently working at Gallaudet University as an assistant professor in the Department of Accessibility and Human-Centered Computer and Policy. And its acronym is ACHP. I'm currently a part of the master's program for MS and the MPHD program for Human-Computer Society accessibility, which encompasses different versions of technology and trying to create a standard all within this program. So that's my background.
Awesome. Who wants to go next? Raja? Okay, go ahead. Yes, hello, my name is Raja Kushalnagar. And I always tease, I don't know how to pronounce my name. And it's okay if the interpreter doesn't know how to voice my name either. I just emphasize that because there are more than one way to access language, whether it be speaking, signing, or captions. So here, what I care about is that you fingerspell my name correctly. I know that it is a hard task, but I am a professor at Gallaudet University, and that's the Accessibility Human Center of Computer and Policy with the master's PhD program, as well as the lead director of accessibility for AI and Sign Language Center. All right, thank you. All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Opeoluwa Sotonwa. I work for the Commission for the Massachusetts Commission of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I've been in my position for the last 5 years, and I'm the association head here for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission throughout the state of Massachusetts. Before that time, I was a part of the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing for 6 years as a director. And previous to that, I was a part of another role for commissioner. So this has been a role that I've been a part of for the last several years of my life, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all.
And we are honored to have you here with us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and knowledge as well as expertise. So to provide some context of this discussion, we've had conversations in this space for the deaf community who we serve as well as for leadership such as yourself, deaf organizations, commissions, colleges, universities, institutions, I mean, you name it, the gamut. They all have, and we do have influence within systems and technology, especially with AI. We already know from 25, 30 years ago with the implementation of VRI, which is video remote interpreting. And we saw a big shift within our communication access through VRI, which was great, but also it caused harm as well to our community. And with AI, we know it will happen again. We have seen the conversations about language, sign language with AI, the use of AI, and how we can use it within job application, and we use it for screening job applicants. There are some benefits, but again, it does cause harm. So within your leadership roles, how do we know this is not the last time that we'll have this kind of technology disruption or shift? How are we able to navigate this efficiently? How do we, keep moving and navigating this with the uncertainty? What will this future hold? How do we make decisions? Do we implement to protect our community as well as take advantage of the technology? So, any thoughts?
I'm happy to start. AI does provide a lot of excitement throughout our community and simultaneously provides a sense of anxiety with challenges that we are unsure of. In the past, we have noticed a trend when new technology has aroused all of the innovation. There has constantly been a sense of anxiety and resistance to change that is caused by the innovation. And this is something that I do expect to happen in the future in terms of the impact we see on a daily basis. It'll impact the way we engage with one another. It'll impact how we communicate as well. The most critical thing that I think from a state level where I am positioned is how we are building AI within sign language and in different capacities, and how we engage the deaf and hard of hearing stakeholders and community during the building process and afterwards. Typically, what we see happen is that we see some innovation be built, and then the deaf and hard of hearing community is engaged to test, and changes must be then implemented. So I think that really we need to engage from the beginning to consider the daily experiences and frustrations or challenges that may arise as a result of this innovation so we can mitigate it as much as possible.
Great, thank you. So we're talking about including the deaf and hard of hearing as well as deafblind communities in the building of this technology and AI. So what does that look like to you? How do we guarantee to have that diverse representation included in that? Raja here. I believe it starts with the systems and the technologies that support the processes. Having that mindset. If we don't include them, it would be a bad design. And if we don't have people who understand technology, then it's hard to include these individuals from the very beginning. And for that pipeline, we need people who use the technology, but are also included in the implementation, development, experimentation, and marketing of the tools to be able to support throughout that whole continuum for that to be achieved. And so for these systems, we have to include these individuals at every step of the way. So we need to provide training at universities and at the school level to include them and not to dismiss individuals. Before we would, exclude deaf people from technology as well as from medicine. And later the systems finally started to accept deaf individuals within their programs, especially for medicine. And now we're seeing the implementation of medicine and technology being developed, including AI, with the use of deaf individuals. So that is a key point here, is to be able to bridge those two.
Abraham here. Yes, I would love to add to what was stated by both Dr. Obiluwa and Raja. I would like to say we can look at the results before and after. What was mentioned before is that there's many companies who build and innovate and then later on consider including the deaf and hard of hearing community simply for the testing of prototypes and somewhat provide a sense of gratitude for the testing, which causes problems. But there are also issues when we look at the very beginning of these procedures, when we're really considering the idea of a particular technology or product or system that is being innovated. We have a concept of an idea of a goal, and we need to consider who is contributing to these ideas, who is contributing to the discussion before there is any invested time, energy in individuals to then build the product, which is great, but simultaneously causes harm and can increase risk, looking at the very beginning of the process. Now, when we look at the post effect of the impact, we look at continuous monitoring on how this new innovation or technology is impacting individuals and the future. And there is a lot involved with that process. We look at policies, social frameworks, actual product users, the developers, everybody who was involved throughout the entire continuum. So we're looking at it from a before, during, and after perspective. In the beginning, there was a mention about 30 years ago where technology was a disruptor and shifting, and we are experiencing that shift again. And it's happening right now in the age of AI. There are a few models of technology cycles. One model is a user called Gardner's pipe clause. Cycle rather, where we have an idea of a concept. And as there is a development, there is a sense of high expectation before the actual product is disseminated to the public and users have the ability to test it, right? There's this build of excitement for the technology. And we are now looking at individuals who are trying to see real world applications to see if there are actual issues and challenges and points of failure, which necessarily didn't help once the product was made available to the larger society. So now we're looking at starting earlier in the process to avoid those challenges, and there has been improvements. We see the slope of that impact lessen when we're looking at the cycle. And we've seen this happen with automatic captioning. Again, the cycle will continue to happen as we create new technology and new innovative ideas. And we need to identify where we are currently in with AI for that cycle. We have to look at history to consider the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining about the Garner's hype cycle of technology development. I find that very fascinating. And as you know, AI clearly, at least I think right now, is a hype, right? So as leaders, as influencers, as thought, decision makers, how do we support these individuals and these organizations with their decisions? Raja, you had mentioned that you really have to understand technology as you start to think about the implementation of these devices or tools. Abraham, you mentioned about the differentiation of hype and actually the use of AI or the use of technology and how we navigate that. So that's great. My question now is, as we are navigating this, how do we differentiate that? How do we separate that, right? How do we work with the people in power, in authority to make these decisions in policy that they might not understand technology, but we're still in this role of, having to deal with them. How do we partner with them to make sure as leaders that they are partnering with us? How do we leverage that at the same time reducing harm? I see Ope, I see your hand being raised. Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Opie here. I would love to provide a different perspective from a state level. When we look at policymakers and the individuals involved, oftentimes the individuals who are directly impacted by the implementation of the policy are not invited to the table during the beginning discussions. We can consider asking for feedback, asking for any kind, and if there is feedback that is requested from the community, it's very slim. When we look at the world of AI, there is a very significant impact on our daily life. And it's critical that we ensure that deaf and hard of hearing individuals who have lived experience with the impact are represented at the table where the decisions are made. There are caps when it comes to the systemic processes and different challenges that deaf and hard of hearing individuals face when they are engaged in these processes that we have to acknowledge and the barriers that they face. But it does require a lot of investment, in the same type of investment we see happening with the building of AI, and looking at a state level where we can fund projects, such as here in Massachusetts and throughout the United States, where the government's goal can really look at how AI can be a benefit to improve the lives of our citizens, and how we're able to help deaf and hard of hearing or support deaf and hard of hearing further by the use of AI. And while we are doing that, there are decisions being made, and those individuals must be welcomed to be a part of the table conversation and discussion. We cannot continue building and then inviting afterwards. And I do see this shift happening in the state of Massachusetts, which gets me excited.
And that's great. You're right. We do need to create those seats at the table, and we need those seats at the table. But, what's that look like to be inclusive, to have these individuals at that table? What does that look like? Oh, go ahead. Okay. So to set up a reliance for, a seat at the table, we need to have every level someone involved, whether it be innovation or the ideation of a product at that level. Then you have the development level, you have the marketing level, which means qualified deaf and hard of hearing people to show up and be represented and representative of their community. So being able to be in those processes of experiment, of development, and being able to be within the system to enhance it, to develop the human capital. And, encouraging people to be represented and showing up to have a seat at the table. They need to be represented well. And I think that's a vital step in what can happen. And the states should, federal, state level, all of these organizations should be thinking about the systemic level and the push to have companies include deaf and hard of hearing individuals to be inclusive, even at the university level, the school level, production, having highly qualified people in these states. And also, opening up the conversation to have deaf people represented, right, in a variety of different ways, building relationships within the community, building trust, having groups of people who historically have been marginalized and excluded from these conversations. Of course, that causes harm. So we have to then repeat with trust. So, Abraham.
Yes, Abraham here. A lot of education is still unfolding. to model that the deaf community is not simply a niche. It's not a very small group when we're looking at the number of people in the deaf community from a statistic standpoint compared to that of their hearing counterparts. It is a smaller group, but in terms of the wealth of their experience, the deaf lens and perspectives, ideas that the community can bring, it's comparable to something called the curb cut effect. And this theory is that some technology, including actual physical buildings, what's been noticed by this theory is a perspective that ends up helping not simply the disability community first, but whenever we apply the lens of the deaf and hard of hearing community or individuals with disability, it actually ends up benefiting everybody. Everyone uses these adjustments and is more inclusive. So the building of technology and innovation should not be this resistive willingness to include, but should be more of enthusiastic approach when we are considering the curb cut effect. We're looking at universal design, user experience, really engaging everybody, not solely for the focus of the deaf and hard of hearing community and their needs, but more from a larger perspective of how this really encompasses the benefit of the entire society. Looking at the table talk conversation, as Dr. Ope has already mentioned, is really bringing somebody not solely to tokenize them as the one representative of a community, but really welcoming individuals and bringing the unique perspectives, that diversity of thoughts and wealth of knowledge. And again, not solely from a perspective to fill the gap, but to value the ideas and the contributions that can be made. And the four of us as this. So how do we then engage to educate institutions, companies, individuals on a systemic level to also recognize this opportunity and then open up the door to ensure that everybody has access to the table discussion? So I believe it's a shift in mindset.
Exactly. Exactly. Being able to reframe that perspective, right? And having deaf, or at least, having deaf people be aware of the challenges and the barriers that we experience every single day, working to dismantle those barriers within our roles, but also framing it as, we are not lacking. We have something to offer that's very crucial to the world. And, still the world is waking up to that, including leadership roles, the use of AI, right? With AI and its evolvement, how are we able to use that to shape that thinking and for larger society? I'd like to add, a partnership between the systems and individuals as well as technology. So if technology is not available, then it's very hard for systems to accept it. So, for example, in 1979, the Supreme Court made a commitment and said, nursing and medical professionals should not be deaf. We're not going to accept you into our schools, because the use of interpreters back then, they didn't want to include nursing students into the program that were deaf and hard of hearing. Then both systems as well as the technology had advanced 30 years later. And then interpreters, I believe it was paid from VR, captioners, they became available. And as a result, these students were then accepted into medical school as well as nursing school in those medical programs. So if things have changed, right, now blind people are not able to drive. But if there are self-driving cars, if they were to occur, then blind people would be able to have their own cars without any issues. Laws have changed. Of course, there's, some overlap there. But Wow, mind-blowing information. Okay, Opie, go ahead.
Yes, Ope here. I would love to what Raja just mentioned recently in terms of history and everything that has unfolded up until modern day and the changes we've witnessed. Looking at AI and the changes that are unfolding, we really see the need for a state level to wake up when it comes to policy to honor and protect deaf and hard of hearing and deaf blind and blind individuals throughout this shift. We see this massive surge of development and funding to provide opportunities to continue moving forward. But what I'm noticing is a lack of balance. There is a large gap when we're looking at engaging deaf and hard of hearing or blind individuals in this progression. And looking at what technology can do is not just that, but looking how it could benefit to the community. There's been so many different cycles of individuals fighting for their rights, disability rights, civil rights, and looking at that disruption and looking at the fight, we need to look at who is responsible and accountable and how policies can be implemented to ensure that the deaf and hard of hearing community is honored and protected. Looking at whether or not the ADA is being a part of this development too, and seeing how individuals are volunteering to ensure that the technology is actually beneficial. Uh, right now, there are a lot of laws and policies that are vague or murky, nonetheless, um, surrounding this new technology. And so, from a state level, we really need to take a clear acknowledgement about how we want to move forward with ensuring that we protect our communities.
I really love that. Thank you so much for that comment because really it's about balance between innovation and caution, right? So we want to make sure that we could take these innovations and creativity, but also be cautious about it. You know, through the use of innovation, we want to be cautious to reduce the harm to our communities. So we have to consider these hard questions, right? So this is what we're talking about. Now, what are the hard questions that, you know, within the leadership roles, such as ourselves, that our teams have to experience, our partners deal with, the community goes with before we leverage, you know, specific technology or the implementation of any policy?
Abraham here. Before I come up with a specific question that I consider, I often first think about the group that I am already a member of, which is called COSET. And it's a group for sign language equity in technology, COSET. COSET really encompasses integrating what we call socio, SOCIO, so it's social technology, societal systems, and social perspectives that must incorporate both actual social interaction and technology. So this is something that we engage with. From a lens of technology, we look at the progression and the different levels of technology, its function, its quality, and simultaneously, we're looking at society and the social impact, looking at how users and individuals are actually accessing the technology once it's been provided, looking at whether or not society is ready or aware of the potential risks, harm, and what we do if and when harm happens. How is accountability provided? So there is a lot surrounding what this group does. So we're looking at these two lenses of society and technology, and we can't simply focus solely on society while ignoring technology. We cannot neglect one or the other. They have to work in conjunction, whether that's through education, um, uh, policy development, and that's from the societal side. From a technological side, we look at the development process, right? We cannot neglect the impact of society and in society as a whole while developing technology. So we're looking at both avenues and how they both influence one another, right? They cannot work in silos, or else we will see a gap. They do influence one another. And we then have to consider how this influence on one another can ensure that there is a use for improvement in the future. And while we are looking at these two factors, we also have to consider other external factors of influence that might also shift and provide a bigger picture in how we are conceptualizing a new technology and the impact of the future. So that's an idea that I usually take.
Beautiful. Okay, Opie.
Dr. Ope here. Yes, I would first love what you said, Dr. Abraham, about COSIT. My team currently, right now, has been reading a lot of the work that's been produced by the organization, which is phenomenal. There are a plethora of tools that we use from a state level that we don't have to reinvent the wheel because it's provided there. And there are many opportunities for individuals to look at COSET and see what they've already accomplished and achieved. There's different presentations and materials and resources that is available there, which is just amazing. So I wanted to express my gratitude for that resource. But back to the question of considering the hard questions we must face as leaders. So first I look at the question I ask is who owns the model of the new innovation? Who benefits? Who controls future use of the innovative tool? And can everyone be involved? And are we able to then shift in the future? Where are the contributions from several communities? And again, accountability of the model. And I think these are questions that we must ask ourselves that are critical. They're fairly abstract questions, but I do believe that considering and developing answers to these questions can really help us ensure that we mitigate harm and that we are including the community and making sure that they are motivated and willing to equally contribute and invest in the development of innovation. Many of you are aware that BU has hosted the first international conference, and it was really an honor to be able to support that event. And one of the benefits that I've noticed there is that many companies and developers of AI language are deaf and hard, are members of the deaf and hard of hearing community. And this is the first time in history that I am seeing our community really take ownership within the cycle of innovation in this space, meaning that we are not passive individuals being impacted by this innovation, but we are active members contributing, and we are being a part of the development of policy to ensure that our community is protected and honored safely, and looking at ADA compliance as well. From a second lens is from a world level, being able to exemplify models and claim that it is effective in not just the development, but the use from a world lens. And so I would ask from a worldly level, the same questions that we have to really keep in mind, that we have to approach innovation together.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Raja. I just wanted to add one more thing. It's a balance of what Dr. Opie and Abraham had mentioned. You know, there are benefits and there are risks involved, but also at an individualistic level and a collection or group level. We have the different levels that sometimes we have incentives for people to use the use of interpreters, the use of AI. On an individual level, it's different than at a community level. So if we would like to use something, that's fine. Go ahead and use it. But could this harm the community? It might harm the community, but it benefits an individual, and then vice versa. So we really have to think of it as a balancing act of the reduction of harm as well as the benefits at all levels, so that all people can benefit from those individuals to go to the national level. And that's very true. And we see those different, applications of technologies talking about the conference at Boston University. There was a lot of discussion recently in the use of sign language AI, and there's a lot of accountability, that for people that are making decisions, they are held accountable. Companies to develop these tools, they are accountable. So after that, I actually saw Salima, one of the people who posted about it, had actually went to hurt care for something and went in, and there was went into urgent care for something, and there was no sign language interpreter available. So they actually provided an app with sign language translation, if you will, that was already using AI instead of interpreters. So they had the technology. You see it coming to fruition. So this person obviously was able to handle that situation in their own preferred way. But how we hold these people accountable when it's implemented? People might say, oh, this is a great idea, let's use it. But really, how do we hold the medical systems or the people who are the decision makers accountable? Because these are the results of the technology tools. Yes, Raja. So the benefits of AI are that they are available 24/7, anywhere, anytime. The difference is that humans are not. But humans obviously have oversight and accountability, as well as, within these positions, they have the mechanics of being able to know what to do, whereas these tools of AI do not have that yet. So that is one problem that we have here. Another one is that in the future, what that looks like is humans and AI working together. What would that look like? Who's responsible for that? What are the benefits when you have some, technology that's available, and accountability of the humanistic approach?
Abraham here. Yes, I would like to mention how I would like to summarize a few trends that I've noticed. And I would like to start with what Dr. Opie has mentioned about the conference that happened recently in Boston this past April. At that conference, they did have another one, I want to say back in 2022 at Brown University, and that conference was hosted by COSET. It was very early on, but they were focusing on sign language for interpreting, or interpreters specifically. And now in 2026, we see a progression where there is a heavy focus on company involvement with sign language within AI, not solely for interpreters, but for various use purposes as well. At the same time, companies that are involved have different, at that time in 2022, the level of technology and company involvement was different. So we saw that there was more of a generalization of sign language within the use of AI, and how technology or tech companies have decided to be involved. And a trend that I've seen is that several of the companies were founded by hearing individuals and hearing-led companies. However, on the flip side, they did begin hiring deaf individuals and providing further opportunity for deaf individuals in terms of employment and contributions. Back before our current modern time, we saw that there was this mindset that deaf individuals are unable, other that they can't. There was more barriers with the involvement of folks from the deaf and hard of hearing. But I'm not sure of the term I'm looking for, but from a marketing position and from a development position, we really see what's happening behind the system is that there is more engagement. Individuals are starting to become involved in the community from a conference level, right? It might be a CEO coming to a conference, and this is an individual who is a decision maker with strategies, with implementation, with part of the development of these tools and technologies. So there is a large shift happening with tech companies who are now coming directly to me and are saying things about how they're acknowledging issues that things cannot made for us without us, right? And they're acknowledging that deaf members of the community can be a part of the development of this innovative technology. So we see that they're starting to hire deaf individuals as subject matter experts to train and educate their workforce. So a bit about Gallaudet, we are building a pipeline, and we know that in every field, it begins with the young adults and the youth who are inspired to see role models or to have an idea that they can establish a goal that they aspire to in their future life as adults through various positions in various fields. And with AI, we didn't see a lot of deaf community members who were within the leadership space of AI. And so Gallaudet, we are implementing it. And this also includes you, Dr. Raja and Dr. Opie, who you are leaders and role models who are able to provide resources and, look at how you can provide training to students at Gallaudet University. And maybe this is something we can partnership with how we can include experts like yourselves to train the youth to understand the use and development in this new space. And having a deaf person show up as a leader with their own lived experience and backgrounds can make a really big impact. We also recently established a PhD program here as well. And so in the future, we will have PhD students who are more advanced and deeply involved in this field, whether it's through research or development or also positions of leadership. So that's also exciting. I'd like to shift back a bit when we're looking at the interests of hearing individuals who have founded companies and have now transitioned to provide opportunities to a diversity of individuals. I think this will directly influence and impact our future generation, which is exciting.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess I just didn't realize that, these have been transitioned from hearing individuals to deaf people. So it's really good to know. Also, I've, acknowledge that they do have their own work and that impacts the communities that they serve as well. So that's fantastic to know, as well as Gallaudet's program and the implementation in building that pipeline of leaders. So that, that leads me to my next leadership question, right? So if you're thinking about the future of leadership, including policy, creating policy, legislation, lobbying, decision making, what are the qualities that leadership, have within this space, within the use of technology, from the deaf community, deaf blind, deaf hard of hearing communities? What are the qualities or characteristics, the knowledge, the skill sets that they should have to be effective in these roles as leaders and navigating this, especially with the shift of technology, the uncertainty of it all?
Dr. Ope here. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. when in a position of leadership, it's critical to understand that you cannot understand or know everything. It's impossible. AI right now is a very deep and rich area that can become overwhelming because of all of the uncertainty. However, there is opportunity to learn. And the way that you learn is by engaging with people and listening and taking the time to understand what they have to say or what they have to communicate. And this can include the deaf and hard of hearing, the deaf-blind community is showing up to the community and really being attentive to their comments, their experiences, and their stories and backgrounds. Another area is looking at research and development, and looking at things from a state level, which is not solely an opportunity to buy or develop an AI team. That's not necessarily necessary, but the key is to really understand the strategy and looking at it from that perspective. What is the strategy which also incorporates engaging and being attentive to the communities who will use the resources and tools? We're looking at researchers, we're looking at subject expert matters in technology. We're looking at what other states are also doing within this field and how we can also replicate what is effective. And also really being honed in on the priorities that we set. From a state level, we look at how we want to ensure that the community is engaged and how we are able to spread awareness of what the community needs, if whether or not it's from the deaf community's lived perspective, from a research area, from marketing, being able to gauge the plethora of communities and their knowledge and being able to fund so we have that resource to then contribute into AI, I think is something that would benefit because there are a lot of resources for funding when it comes to AI. So again, it's really looking at the priorities set and then asking the communities, where are they? Because the deaf community is ready to be involved. So again, it's a wake-up call, a call to action for individuals in leadership that if you are in this position, you have to consider all of the communities in the resource as a source of resource and making sure that you take that time.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a really fantastic comment. Raja, Abraham, do you want to add anything?
Abraham here. Yes, I'd like to. I don't have too much to add because Dr. Ope pretty much covered it all. But if I did have to say something, I believe historically we saw that many fields, well, we saw that individuals pretty much stuck to one field throughout their entire career, and there wasn't much cross-functional collaboration. There wasn't a lot of partnerships from uh, different types of fields. There might have been some influence from one field to the other, but I do see a shift now that everything is becoming interdisciplinary and individuals are becoming more dynamic in their careers. And like Dr. Ope has mentioned, that we cannot be knowledgeable of everything. However, you might be more of an expert in one area of a particular field, but how do we then gain more maybe superficial knowledge of other disciplines so that if a challenge comes up, you're able to adapt and shift effectively rather than having a very set mindset on one field of expertise? Naturally, I want to say when we're looking both from a social and technological lens, a lot economy and money has a heavy influence on how decisions are made or how these fields shift and move. So I often look at, is the support that is needed actually provided? Is there investment to ensure that there is a good response from various fields so that they have the ability to maintain momentum? And how is it benefiting society at large, whether from an institution or an academic level?
Thank you.
Yeah, it really, as I mentioned, Dr. Obe said it
Right.
all.
Yeah. Raja, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to add? I was just going to say, being mindful of the different stakeholders within your services and how you can include those individuals in the discussions to help make the best decisions, policies, as well as financial contributions as well. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're ready to wrap this up here. Our conversation was very fascinating. I've learned a lot. Thank you. The last question that I'd like to ask for your thoughts. What's one key takeaway that you'd like our future leaders and our current leaders to really stick with to help them within their leadership and how to lead differently? Raja here. I'd like to say that AI is amazing and it will impact our future. It's available 24/7, but also watch out for the harm that it does. And, based off of the individual, community, and national levels, if you do that, it could be amazing, but be careful of the harm that it causes. All right. Thank you.
Dr. Abraham here. I would like to add, but it might be slightly different. I think being flexible, adaptive, and what Dr. Rogers said is being mindful. I'd like to emphasize, for example, that technology follows a cycle, as been mentioned, and being mindful of where we are within the cycle, being able to identify your surrounding and the environment.
At the different levels, yeah.
Exactly, right? Being able to look from a more a higher lens of what is happening, but also using history to help make informed decisions on future impact and influence, looking at it from a meta perspective of societal impact and technology development, not simply addressing what is currently happening from a micro level, but being able to take a step back from a meta perspective. From a metacognition, maybe is the word that I'd like to pick if I had to just summarize it in one word.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Opie.
Yeah, I echo what Dr. Raja and Abraham has already mentioned, but I believe that the future of AI and accessibility will really be honed in by these tech companies and by the decisions that we make today. It is highly critical that we keep that top of mind, whether we are a state leader, a community leader, at any level that you are involved in making decisions. We may be behind, and we have to make sure that we are actively engaged and making decisions now, because if we're waiting to fix the issues later, it becomes an expensive issue. It is costly from a financial, from an impact level. And I'd like to emphasize that innovation is phenomenal, and it is fast spreading, and it is much more advanced, and we can continue to advance more than our imaginations could even consider. To be open-minded on what innovation can do, and always be mindful of our communities and engaging and being in tune with how they are feeling and what they are experiencing, and making sure that the technology serves the deaf and hard of hearing community, not the other way around, that individuals of our society have to adapt to the technology. Our technology should adapt to our way of life and to our needs. So I'm really asking leaders to have that mind shift, is that technology is a tool and resource to elevate, and that individuals should not be considered last. They should be front of mind. And knowing that we can all sit together as a think tank and being able to consider how the application of technology will lead us in the future.
Right. Thank you so much. You hit the nail on the head with that. And especially with the mind shift, having those conversations, building trust and that rapport, and asking the questions that we have with this opportunity. So Thank you so much, Dr. Opeoluwa Sotonwa, Dr. Raja Kushalnagar, as well as Abraham Glasser. Thank you so much for your contribution, being involved with this, for your time. I really appreciate you being here and having this conversation with us and our community that we serve and, our future leaders within the deaf community. Thank you also to our sponsors, Interpreter Now, for providing interpreting services and captioning support, as well as accessibility to this. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope that we can all start to think and lead differently. Thank you.